What's going on, everyone? It's your boy back at you again with another Tommy Reads X-Men. Today, we're going to be looking at X-Men number 29 from February 1967, written by Roy Thomas with art by Warner Roth. This one is called When Titans Clash. When Titans Clash. And we start off on a fun note. Usually it's a training montage at the mansion. Not today. Today, the X-Men decide to go ice skating. Okay. You know, a little R&R, a little hanging out, and they bring the Mimic, because apparently he's still on the team. For now. Anyway, the Mimic and the X-Men, I'm not counting him as one of the X-Men right now, but the Mimic and the X-Men go ice skating, and the Mimic's being a jerk, saying he's going to be the best ice skater. Now, in theory, Iceman should be the best ice skater, right? Because it's just like walking for him, but no. He's actually the worst one. Now, Angel takes this opportunity to go ice skating as pairs with Jean. And they're gliding all around doing pirouettes and I don't know what ice skating. Triple Lux is? I don't know. Anyway, need to rewatch Blades of Glory. So Scott gets all emo and he's like, "Oh, Jean. Oh, Jean, won't you love me the way I love you, even though I haven't told you, and I haven't asked how you feel, and all these other factors." But he decides to go off, and he starts blaming his powers again. And he's like, "I need to get rid of these powers again." And he's like, "I can control it." So he closes his eyes. I'm going to show you an example. And he like lifts up his thing, and he's like, and then Optic Blast hits the side of a mountain, causes an avalanche that damn near kills him. But he's okay. So he starts going off. He's like, "Well, that was weird. I guess I can control powers." And just so happens, this mountain is the secret lair. Yo, I forgot to mention this, that Stan Lee actually goes into a background detail about this lair for some reason. Like, the lair was founded by the British. They were using it for ammunition and stuff during the Revolutionary War. Why we needed to know that about the lair, I don't know, but it gives it a few extra layers to the story. You see what I did there? All right, back to the review later. Of the Super Adaptoid. Who's the Super Adaptoid? I had to ask myself that. I've never heard of this villain before, but apparently he's an Avengers villain. And he's in there chilling in his lair, you know, watching TV. He's like, Dick Van Dyke Show. And then, but he's watching TV or doing whatever, not being evil. And Scott goes and busts up his house and rattles it around. He's like, "Let me go see what's going on here." Now, the Super Adaptoid's power is he has a shard of the Cosmic Cube, apparently, which lets him absorb the Avengers' powers. So that's what he has going for him. So why they didn't call him the Super Absorbatron or something like that, but he's the Adaptoid. Super Adaptoid, because he adapted, I guess. But the X-Men take off from their ice skating adventure. The Super Adaptoid's walking around like, "Who the heck messed up my house?" And he sees Iceman, and who decided to stay behind to practice his skating for some reason, because he didn't want to be the worst one. And Iceman starts fighting the Super Adaptoid, and he stuns him for a bit. Now, what ends up happening is he stuns him, he stops him, but then he goes right back to the mansion. And he's like, "Guys, this crazy thing happened. This crazy robot, blah, blah, blah. I didn't get his name. I froze him. He broke out, and I broke out. I ran. And now I'm here telling you the story, and now we're all caught up." But the X-Men, for some reason, now this baffles my mind reading it. I had to say, I was literally reading it. This is me reading. Oh, wait, what? So the X-Men don't believe him. They're like, "I think you just hit your head. That's not what really happened." What the... Tommy said a bad word. They thinking, I mean, of all the stuff they've seen, they've been to space. They've been to space. They fought giant bugs. They tussled with a dude named El Tigre. But this, some kind of weird robot is too much for them to handle. I don't buy it. But the X-Men are like, I couldn't believe what I was reading. But the X-Men are like, "You're crazy, Bobby. We're going to go to the danger room to practice for real threats." And when they get there, he's like, "Oh, well, maybe I did hit my head or whatever." It's like they convinced him that he didn't see what he saw. What's going on here? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Anyway, shout out Zoolander, I guess. Going to the danger room, and Papa Chuck's there. And who's he with? His favorite X-Men. He's like, oh, y'all late? I'm here working with the Mimic. That's not his voice. It sounds more like Punky Brewster, like Punky. Anyway, that's not how Professor X sounds in my head, but I'm not great at impressions, as you could tell if you've watched these videos. But Professor X is working with the Mimic. Mimic starts trash talking the X-Men again, and Charles is like, you know, and the X-Men want to fight. They said, we've had enough. We're putting hands on this fool because he's trying to be better than we are, and he kind of is better than they are. But that's besides the point. And Charles is like, no, we all have to get along, guys. Hey, you, unball that fist. And then Angel's like, okay. But he's like, we need to get along. And then the Mimic cheap shots Cyclops. He uses his stolen Iceman powers and throws a snowball at Cyclops. And then they start fighting, and then once the Mimic gets his shots in, Papa Chuck's like, well, I guess I can't let it, I'll let it go this time, or whatever. And then they start fighting. And once again, the Mimic shows why he's a better X-Men than all 5 of the X-Men, because he's handling them pretty easily, until Papa Chuck calls it up. He goes, I'm getting bored. I'm getting bored of this, okay? Y'all can't even handle one dude, but you know what? Mimic, you're off the team. And he kicks the Mimic off the team. Now, to me, this has a long time coming, because the Mimic ain't even a mutant. He just got his stuff through, like, some kind of weird experiments or whatever. Go back with the issues, and then you'll see what I was talking about. But that's some Avengers BS, man. Go to that team with that. You ain't no mutant. You can't be on the X-Men. And then, this part was borderline insulting to me, because they gave us a great cliffhanger. Go check out last issue to see what I'm talking about. And they mentioned a group that the Banshee was working with and the Ogre was working with, called Factor 3. And they're like, we'll find out more about Factor 3 in the next issue. That being this issue we're talking about at this moment. And Charles is like, we still have to discover what Factor 3 is. And this was on page 11 out of like a 24-page comic. And that's all they mentioned about it. That's all they mentioned about that cliffhanger from the last issue. Why even bother, bringing it up? Why not just bring it up at the end of this issue if they're going to address it in 2 issues? I don't know. It was just all over the place with, like, why have a cliffhanger? And then all of a sudden we're razzing some weird robot, Avengers robot. I don't know, man. Like, so the Super Adaptoid shows up after the Mimic's, like, out of here. He's like, well, screw you guys, I'm going home. Shout out South Park. I haven't watched that since like 99. Anyway, so the Mimic leaves. Super Adaptoid starts fighting the X-Men. And as you know, when the X-Men fight someone for the first time, it does not go well for them. They get knocked out. They're down and out. They're hurting. And so the Mimic decides, you know what? I should join up with this robot, because the robot starts monologuing about, I'm going to take your powers and, blah, 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 and then I'll be the ultimate awesome. And the Mimic's like, oh, you know what? That sounds pretty good. I like to be awesome myself. And he volunteers to be absorbed by the Super Adaptoid. Now, I don't know what he's thinking, because then like 2 seconds later, Cyclops is like, dude, you're about to be like a mindless zombie for this guy. And he's like, wait, what? And he's like, I didn't know it was going to be like that. I thought it was going to be like membership. Like you get a card, you get a jacket, a secret handshake. You know what I'm saying? Like if you have a secret handshake with me, kudos to you, but that ain't a good one. Anyway, so the Mimic ends up just changing his mind like that. He's like, I want to be part of the team. You know what? He like Along Comes Polly's him. But what I mean is, in the movie Along Came Polly, like Polly's like, oh hey, you want to go to dinner? And then Ben Stiller's character, I think his name is Ruben, was like, yeah, I could totally go to dinner. She's like, yeah, I don't know if I can go now. And like she like does an about face. So he Along Came Polly'd him. That's a term, trademark Tommy Inc. And he starts fighting the Super Adaptoid. The Mimic does. Now, Super Adaptoid has the Avengers power, and they kind of focus on like Giant Man and Thor's strength, Captain America's Captain Americaness. He has some arrows behind him, so you know it's Hawkeye, and he can fly like the Wasp or whatever. Now, the Mimic, as we all know, has the X-Men's power. So besides a few panels that we got on a random issue early on when they went to Europe, where they tussled with the Avengers for like 2 panels. This is our first taste of the Avengers versus X-Men that we would see years and years and years later. So yeah, and it don't go well for the Super Adaptoid. Yeah, that's right, because Mimic is somehow a better X-Men than the X-Men. And he's putting hands on Adaptoid, and then, you know, he's getting his licks in. The fight's pretty good. And then all of a sudden, Mimic remembers that he has absorbed Charles's powers as well. So he does the old mind wipe. That was, like, if you slow it down, it's a John Cena, you can't see me. But if you speed it up, it's like, mind wipe, baby. And he's mind wiped, so he forgets he has the Avengers powers, and he turns into just a regular old boring-ass robot. And then he's like, oh, I can't fly. And then he falls into the water. Did I mention they were fighting a flood of water? Because we didn't mention that there was water anywhere near the school up until this point. But all of a sudden, there's like a big ocean. Anyway, and that's the end of the issue. They don't address Factor 3. One and done, I think. Let me go back and hit you with some final thoughts after I take a breath, man, because they got me all pumped up. And even though he got the W for him, the Mimic's still off the team, which I don't mind one bit. Hells to the year. Pretty good impression? No? Whatever. Anyway, final thoughts. So, this issue was about a 7 out of 10. I enjoyed the action. It was really good action. You know, you had a bunch of fights with the Super Adaptoid. I didn't think he was the greatest villain in the world, but, like, you know, for a one and done, it's all right. And I guess they're going deep cuts and pulling out Avengers villains while they build the X-Men up for have new villains and stuff like that. So that's cool. The X-Men were really a non-factor in this one. They kind of took a beating, and that was it, because it was the Mimic who got the W, not the X-Men. They were standing there watching like, oh man, why didn't I do that move? And the Factor 3 cliffhanger from the last issue was a non-factor. It was stupid. Like, they didn't mention it besides that one panel in the middle of the book, and they didn't address it anymore. Now, I did like that it gave us a taste of the Avengers versus X-Men, which we would get decades later. And I'm sure they've tussled before, and I know somewhere in like the 70s and 80s there was Avengers versus X-Men crossover, and maybe one day I'll do that for random reads, but until then, this was our first real, like, you know, sample, like Costco sample size portion of the fight that would come. And Super Adaptoid, like I said, he was alright for a one and done villain. Or was he a villain? Was he a villain, or was he a dude defending his house after Cyclops done messed it up? Like, if someone walked by all distraught and kicked the crap out of my car, I would be kicking the crap out of them. Let that know if you ever see me driving down the street. But, yeah, so, I mean, is he just defending his house, or is he a villain? Because, I mean, it seemed like he was just protecting his property. It was Cyclops who started it, and it was the Mimic who got to finish it. Good issue, 7 out of 10. We break the streak of just mediocre issues, so that was awesome. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe down here, like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification up in the corners. Got a lot of great things on the channel. If you want to see what I've been reading recently during the quarantine of 2020, or what I had read, please check out the random reads section of this channel. We got a lot more X-Men reviews coming up, a few ChubCon reviews coming up pretty soon. So stick with us. Tell your friends. Thank you. Later.